Like to call a work session to order for October 16, 2023. City Clerk, please read the roll call.
Let the record reflect that all members are present.
Thank you. We have one item for discussion tonight. Would like to remind council that staff will be pausing intermediately to answer any questions. We will now hear from Barbara Chappelle, our Water Services Director, about water services provided in South Goodyear. You're up, Barb.
Thank you. Okay, good evening. I already have my introduction, so I won't do that again. Just wanted to call your attention. I have a map up here to show the different, can you not hear me? I'm sorry, is the microphone, do I have to turn it? Oh, okay, better? I kind of hear myself-ish. I'll try to speak up. I'm usually pretty loud, so. To the north of the city, we have 3 private providers that serve residents in Goodyear. We have the EPCOR Water, we have Arizona Water, and then we have the Liberty Utility Services. The EPCOR service area serves water only, and the city serves sewer in those areas. What you see in blue on the map on the left is where the city of Goodyear provides water and sewer services. And I just wanted to call attention to this Pecos Road alignment. That's pretty much the southern extent of our current service area where we have infrastructure to actually serve. In the 2016 Integrated Water Master Plan, that's about as far south as we planned for services due to the thought was below Pecos would probably be outside the 25-year planning horizon. Since that plan was adopted, we've had several property owners south of Pecos interested in developing in Goodyear, and we've worked through some deal points and some development agreements on a few that were just south of that Pecos Road alignment. But the map on the right, what I'm trying to show here is really how far south the city of Goodyear currently goes. So the area towards the far right side that's not colored at all is the area around Mobile. There are a couple of property owners and projects down there, Amaranth being one in particular, but just so you know, that's kind of the area that, that we're talking about when we talk about Amaranth. So I went through kind of a thought process on the differences between a private and a public provider, and really just put together a few thoughts and opinions, one being governing body. So oversight of private utilities lies on the Arizona Corporation Commission, where for the private utility, we have you folks. The mayor and council of our city is elected by our residents and our customers that can include rate setting and policy for how the utility moves forward. Jurisdictional boundaries. As we've seen in many of the private utilities on the north side, they don't necessarily, their service area doesn't necessarily coincide with the city's jurisdictional boundaries. So you can have impacts on certain areas that are outside our city limits but served by the same utility. And that can pose some challenges, especially one example recently has been Litchfield Park's issues with Liberty Utilities. They've been undergoing some challenges where it might not have impacted our residents, but it could have been vice versa. Stakeholders. One of the other areas I like to think about is as a public utility, we're beholden to our residents for more than just providing water and sewer services. And so I feel like they're not just customers for us, right? They're really our stakeholders. We're just stewards of their resources. And so for a public utility, I feel like the customer service aspect is a little bit more enhanced. Fire service is another area within our city's jurisdictional boundaries. We would provide fire service. When that fire department shows up to a hydrant from a private utility, how do we know if it's working? How do we know if it's at the appropriate pressures? There's a lot better communication across department. When we have a line out of service for maintenance, we notify multiple people, including our fire department, if we're going to put a hydrant out of service for a period of time, and we let them know when it comes back on. that kind of coordination and communication doesn't happen between the private utility. Economic development. Water and sewer services are critical for growing our city, and sometimes there's trade-offs. Those decisions should be on our mayor and council on where we want those trade-offs to lie. Maybe there is a policy or a particular economic development project that we do want to apply additional resources to, and we have the ability to manage those when we have the utility in-house. And then finally, I like to bring up the sustainability aspect. In the city, we're a designated provider. We continuously have to prove a 100-year supply. The majority of the private utilities are groundwater dependent, and as such, rely on someone else to replenish groundwater that's been pumped. And we've seen recently that that's not really a sustainable model, and it's caused some challenges in the valley. So those are just some of my thoughts on the subject, but I would really like to hear from the mayor and council on what your thoughts are and potential future policy. Sorry, Lynette, you have something to add?
Oh, I just, yes.
I just
Yes, go ahead.
May I just want to add that this is a discussion for the council. As we grow, it's important to get policy direction from the council as to should the city be the provider of those services, or are we okay with working with private companies to operate the water and wastewater systems? So, and it's becoming more of a conversation. So seeking policy direction on this subject.
Okay, thank you. First up, Councilmember Stipp.
Well, that was my first question, is why are we even having this discussion? So, you know, I think without any context, this is a very difficult conversation to even have. Do we want public versus private? I think the very simple answer to a very simple question is, of course we do. We want it to be our water system. However, the challenges of where the water systems currently exist compared to where does the water actually exist are two drastically different questions. We want all the water in our area, for example, but there are areas down in the Estrella Mountain area, not Estrella Mountain Ranch proper, but in Rainbow Valley farther south, that there is no water. And the closest water supply is a public provider, or is a private provider. So how can we just give a blanket public versus private answer to a question that is extremely complicated? I don't know that we should really be looking at that as a wholesale blanket, we will never or we will always. There is always that middle ground, particularly around development in the area that we expect the city to grow exponentially as far as numbers are concerned. I don't think the pace will be as much as it currently is, but if you consider I'm going to say within the Goodyear Water Service area, when we talk about growth, our boxes are, that's a great blue map. But where is the water? Who controls the water? We think we do, but we really don't. Doesn't Estrella Mountain Ranch really control the quantity of that water?
No, actually, Estrella Mountain Ranch has purchased capacity in our system, but that we still own that water and we deliver it to them. We've just had them, they paid up front to secure capacity for their development. And the area in the white, that water still currently belongs to the environment. Most of it that's available for that area is groundwater. Without someone managing and developing additional resources, that area would be a groundwater dependent area.
So if I own land, and let's just say south of Pecos, because I think that's about roughly where Estrella Mountain Ranch ends, plus or minus. If I own land in that particular area and I want to put houses up in there, where am I getting my water from?
You have to apply for an analysis from the state of Arizona, and then if they recognize the resource, you have to prove what's available under your particular property, and then they will issue a certificate with what they feel is 100% reliable for 100 to support 100 years of that growth. And then once that certificate is issued to the property owner, then you have the water. And you can you can apply it to the designation, or you could give it to a private provider.
Can I get that water from the city of Goodyear?
Yes.
I could purchase water. We have capacity. We have.
Well, if you wanted to rely on the groundwater that's under your
No,
property.
not that.
Okay.
I'm not interested in doing that. I want water.
You want water? We currently do not have resources set aside for south of Pecos.
So, or west of the city limit right now. So all of this area that we've been talking about in Rainbow Valley, we've got 3 very large parcels that are looking to annex into the city. They are looking for a water supply, and we do not have the ability to provide it for them. Is that correct?
Not today.
So if we are interested in those particular developments coming in, the only way for them to be served with water is through a private provider
No,
or their own water supply.
Well, their certificate, we would apply to put their certificate in our designation, and we would provide them the water. So we have our infrastructure right up to the Pecos Road. So from that perspective, if they started up there, that would be the easiest way for us to encompass them in our service area, because we could just extend our system and serve them.
So the old, I'm going to say it was Adaman water that was piped from the north to the south. We entered into multiple agreements, and I'm going to look down to the right of the dais, no offense, but to everybody else that was here in 2011 or 2012. We spent a lot of effort and money to bring water from Adaman Well, which is well north of the city, down to Estrella Mountain Ranch. Is that still in play? How
Yep,
does that?
so we have 3 wells that we lease from the Adaman Irrigation District, and we feed one of our sites, which is located at I-10 and Saraville. So again, it's a system capacity. It enhances the system, but we didn't pipe it all the way down to Estrella. We used our existing infrastructure to get it the rest of the way.
So we brought the
So it's
water in and then.
Technically, we have a combined system, and it's all just commingled, so.
You know, I'm interested in what everybody else has to say before I go on any farther, but thanks for
Okay.
answering my questions.
Councilmember Hanson.
Test. Hello. There we go. Make sure it's on. So, no, I appreciate your presentation. So, I mean, obviously, we need more information, cost-wise, and things like that, to do cost analysis on private versus public. But big picture, I would prefer to have all south of Goodyear be in our control, especially in light of the north of the freeway with Liberty and some of the issues that they've been having lately. I like to be able to at least control our own destiny if we can. Obviously, we can't do it all at once. I mean, they won't be able to build that. We need to get capacity to these areas. We got to plan for it, and we got to build to provide that water if they become available or when they become online. So, so I know it's not going to happen tomorrow, but I understand why we're having this discussion is because of that Amaranth project that's looking to start building, and do we want to be able to provide water to them as they grow or not? So, without seeing numbers and what the cost would be, the differences would be, I prefer to have, like I said, a Goodyear water be Goodyear water for the rest of the city. So, because we don't know what we're gonna annex, we just know we have what we already have right now. We might not annex the 3 projects that Councilman Stibbs talks about, but we do already have this annex, and this is ours. So, I'd prefer to be able to provide water into those areas. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Councilmember Loretano.
Well, thank you very much for your information on this. I agree with Councilmember Stipp. I think he said it very well, that it's just really a hard conversation to have without specifics. But in general, I have a couple questions and a couple comments. Our 100-year water supply, when we look at the 2 maps, that encompasses Pecos Pecos North, our 100-year assured water supply, right? So that's, so people know that this is not affecting the people that are here.
Correct.
We've got 100 years. I want to
Correct.
be really clear on that. We're talking about areas that are desert. If there was to be development in those areas and there's groundwater there, are those areas are not in the Phoenix AMA, right?
So they
Or so-
are in, so the Phoenix AMA consists of 7 subbasins, but the governor's announcement in June that stops groundwater dependent growth was only in 3 of those subbasins, and Rainbow Valley was not one of them, which is why I think you guys are gonna see a more and more interest in people trying to do projects in Rainbow Valley because it hasn't been put on the moratorium yet. I think once the state starts to see a lot of this, who knows what happens in the future.
And what about Mobile? Is that area, is that,
It's part of, also in the Rainbow Valley groundwater subbasin. So none of these areas, pretty much Pecos Road is close to that, where the border is. But so all of that in the south is in a different subbasin.
and then if, let's say you want to develop, someone wants to develop that and have the groundwater, and the direction would end up being to use this, have the city be the owner, can they turn over those groundwater rights to the city?
Yes, we would have their certificate recognized in our designation. And then we would develop more diverse portfolios as time went on. We wouldn't want them to be solely on groundwater forever.
Okay, but then we would take over that and go
Yes,
into
we
our
would.
designation if we're the provider. Yeah, I do appreciate this. I think it's a good conversation. I think it's probably good to start having this conversation now rather than right is, but it is a little hard to have specifics. You know, it's really hard to say numbers and amounts and what's this going to cost. I guess for me, one of the issues I get very concerned when we're leapfrogging. If it's contingent to where the city is and it's easy to hook in, I think that's one example. When we're leapfrogging and either have to build a standalone system or we have to hook it into existing, I think that's where I get kind of concerns on cost to our residents. And I get concerns that people are going to start some of those, we don't want to see those wildcat developments go up where people just do whatever, because we were just talking about this, the under 5 acres, and they start having a little housing development here and a little one there, and in soon time you don't have water because they're not doing it correctly. I would like obviously more information as we go on with this, and to look at other ways like CFDs, or how to make sure that the development pays for itself that's down there. Because I would have a concern saying, well, we're going to build this whole new plant down there basically for a developer, whereas we'd have to see a way to get paid back in CFDs along those lines, or whatever financial, that's for the financial people to figure out, but some way that we're not bearing the cost for all of these other developments that want to leapfrog outside our development, current development area. So those are kind of my thoughts. If I hear anything else, I'll let you know. So thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Barbara. I think anytime we have a conversation about water is a good conversation. I too had concerns about what we were trying to accomplish today when I had my one-on-one with Wynette, and I was reminded we did have conversations with a developer who was interested in property around Mobile, but the person missing from the table was you. And we had, there was talk, but there was like, where's our water director to help us balance out? So you list many great advantages for having city-run water. I don't live within the city service group, and my only recourse is a private utility and the Corporation Commission, whereas certainly those in the Goodyear water area are very responsive to citizen user complaints and definitely much better customer service. I guess a greater accountability to users. So if we develop methodically just straight on down, we will add infrastructure and we'll make sure we have water. The concern is, like Councilmember Loretano said, is somebody wants to leapfrog way beyond. And I think that's what makes it impossible for us to make a blanket statement saying, oh yeah, we'll be sure to do it. we definitely would want to know what the costs are, the cost benefit are there. Looking at the private water companies that service Goodyear, are they required to have the same 100-year supply as we are?
No,
They are not.
no.
So they can develop housing and different things, but they do not have the same requirement.
No, they do not. They are members of the Central Arizona Groundwater Replenishment District. So those homes, people don't notice, but on your property tax, you'll see a CAGRD fee. That pays another entity to replenish water that they pump. They have 3 years to replenish the water that they pump, but they're also looking for resources. So they have leases in some cases. So Liberty leases them the water they recharge from their reclamation facility. But they use their main supply used to be excess Colorado River water, which there is none anymore. So they're kind of they're struggling as well. So they have replenishment obligations that they're not 100% sure how they'll meet.
Do they have the same level of commitment of recharging water the way that we do?
No.
No. Oh,
No, actually, I believe Liberty's goal would be to install more purple pipe and use reclaimed water for irrigation to take the pressure off of their potable system.
I seem to recall when we were in the other city hall that there was conversations about having a study done of some of the basins south of Goodyear. Does that ring a bell at all? We weren't sure what was under the ground.
Oh, yeah. So we are looking at that now with our current integrated water master plan study. We're trying to quantify what we think is in that Rainbow Valley sub-basin because we know that some property owners already have certificates. Those certificates add up to about 57,000 acre feet a year. So our goal is to make sure that there's water to meet those certificates before we go and try to accept additional certificates.
Okay, good. And then the last question I have is our surface water plant, are we operating it yet?
Yes,
Very good. So
yes.
we're
It's
no
in
longer have the
operation.
third party.
Has been going on 2 years in December.
Good. Good job. Thank you.
Councilmember Campbell?
So Barb, I want to talk to you about the White area.
Okay.
That's an aquifer.
That is the City of Goodyear planning area that goes all the way down.
And there's an
in
aquifer
Cupsall.
down there.
But that's all from Pecos Road South is a groundwater subbasin and aquifer that has water in it.
I remember before I came on council and we annexed that area, part of that area, I was concerned then that there was not going to be enough water. And I was never convinced that anybody that develops down there is going to have the ability to provide the water, provide the sewer, to run all of the pipe, to have a wastewater plant. It's going to cost a tremendous amount of money. There is no tax revenue down there at all now. So I'm really hesitant about moving ahead. I do want to know what we have down there. I recall that I was told the Mobile area especially used to be orange groves years ago, and they dried up the aquifer with their farming, but this could have been in the 30s and 40s. I can't remember. Someone told me about it when I was actually with some of the people that lived down there that had been there for 15 or 20 years. And they recall that and were sharing it with me. And then I understood now the aquifer has replenished itself because they stopped farming because they ran out of water. And so they're able to do some farming, but I don't know how much. And I don't know if the farming that's done is part of the 57,000 acre feet that is spoken for, or if they're
it is
just
not.
draining it out of the aquifer.
That was not in the report we received. It didn't take
So
any
you don't know.
agriculture into play, and I don't recall if there is any current agriculture down there.
Yeah, there used to be. I don't think there is now. There is closer as you go into Maricopa. across the street and down a little bit, they've got water to there, but they don't have anything up around the Mobile area at all, nothing. Dirt. And I'm just really concerned, number one, I do want, if we are gonna provide water to our residents, I wanna be the owner of the water company. I wanna be able to have the ability to give them water, to handle their complaints. I don't wanna go through what we've been going through with Liberty, because we aren't getting the service we think we should get from Liberty. And I just am really concerned that water is so precious, and we really have to know how we're gonna grow that area, what areas we're actually gonna grow, and no leapfrogging, because we just can't afford to do that. So I'm anxious that we get more information on this, and we really can't make a decision one way or the other on it. I've not been approached by anyone that they're gonna develop any more down there, so I don't know anything about that. However, I am concerned that if we don't have to, we have to give them 100 years. And if we can do that, then it would be okay. But if we can't give them the 100 years, I don't want to do it. That's just my opinion.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Councilmember Stipp?
Councilmember Campbell, I didn't catch what you just, if you can't do what?
I said, if we can't guarantee 100-year water supply, I don't want to do it.
Okay, I didn't hear it. That's,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, that's all right.
Isn't that what I said, Barb?
Yes.
That's what I thought I said. Okay. All right.
It's certainly not your, now the volume is up. I did not hear it
Okay,
prior
sorry.
to that. So
Okay.
thank you for
You're welcome.
clarifying that. You know, it wasn't until the vice mayor mentioned you not being in the room, which kind of reminded me of this conversation of why we need to have it. I don't think in at any moment the discussion about the Mobile area, the Amaranth, or whatever they're going to call it now, down there it seems to make some sense because it's completely disconnected, that perhaps we'd find a way to perhaps start as a private provider and then eventually turn that into a city asset. I think there's ways for us to look at that. The concern that I have is perhaps some private providers have water that we don't, and that may be a way forward, but that would be something that's a little bit closer. The area that Arizona Water Company serves a couple of our customers, do they not, north of I-10?
Yeah, it's a small piece. I don't know if you can see here on the map. The orange is Arizona Water Company. This is the area here in that corner that they serve that's part of our city.
And sometimes there's a development that is very close to either them or EPCOR or another provider, that it may be advantageous for them to connect there as opposed to 5 miles of pipe before they get to a Goodyear connection. So that's why I'm going to go back to what I said originally about sometimes it makes sense to connect to the private provider, and sometimes it doesn't. If in the case that it does go to a private provider, one of the stipulations that we need to add in the disclosures is you are part of a private provider, not the city of Goodyear, blah, 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 like we do for the Air Force Base, et cetera. But, you know, looking at all of our challenges, I think we have to start looking and thinking holistically about water rather than, well, if you're between these roads, you're Goodyear water, and we're not sharing outside of these walls. And the same thing with, say, Buckeye to the west. They're not coming in. There may be a good business reason for us to provide water to west of Perryville Road, for example, in the city of Buckeye. There may be a very valid business reason to do that, and perhaps we want to consider that. And then conversely, somewhere else down the road. So there is no one size fits all. And I think going forward, I would like to see kind of the pros and cons of private water versus public water, development specific, not generically. That there may be a reason to do it, and there may be a reason not to do it. And I'd like to see that compared and contrasted as we go forward. That, I think, really kind of solve our issue going forward, rather than a blanket yes or no. So, thanks, and thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the discussion. From my perspective, it's more than just water. You know, if we go down to Emerald, you not only need the piping and the infrastructure, but you're going to need fire stations, you're going to need police stations, you're going to need all of those things, which is going to strain, in my humble opinion, you know, our resources. I think there's a possibility that you could have private, but at the same token, you know, I'm not real pleased on what happens when we have multiple water companies within the city. We've had some issues. We've had some issues right now as a result of that. So you might start off as private, but from my perspective, the only way to make it whole is to make sure you got the 100-year water, and that's just my opinion, 100-year water supply, and the water is ours. But they would have to put in the infrastructure, they'd have to initially build it, and eventually it would come to us. Because I won't want to see some of the same issues we've had recently when we have multiple water providers, because even if we do, and we put something within their deed or something whenever they develop that says, number one, you know, you have who are they going to call when they have a problem? They're going to call us, right? We're going to get it anyway, you know, when this thing happens, regardless of who owns the water, we're going to get in the middle of that, whether it's to the Corporation Commission or whatever. So I think it's a further discussion that we should have on this to make sure. But again, you know, it's just, to me, it's not just the water, it's all the infrastructure that's got to be put in as this thing starts growing. And we don't want to extend ourselves too much because it gets very costly with the infrastructure. So that's my 2 cents worth. With that, I guess we've had to, I think, did you get enough information to
Yeah, I think we have some good direction. Thank you.
got some good
I
direction?
appreciate everybody's time this evening. Thank you.
okay, thank you very much. You know, with that, excuse me, we have a regular meeting immediately following this work session, so there's no further business to discuss. This meeting adjourned. You can go ahead and start the video, please.